Good afternoon. This talk is about one comparison of an open access press, namely the Athabasca University Press, with three other traditional university presses in Canada. AU Press is Canada's first open access university press. It has all the publications are peer reviewed, so there's quality control at every level of any publication that goes out to it. We do books, monographs, journals. We do innovative and experimental works. We have some poetry collections and Western Canadian literature. Diaries, oral histories, and we have a special series on e-learning. Some of the titles are the ABCs of Human Survival, C'est le temps d'en parler, and From Bricks to Brains. These are some of the newer ones that have recently come out. So they're very much in the arts or social sciences. And we have some bestsellers, namely The Theory and Practice of Online Learning, which is used as a textbook in quite a few universities by Terry Anderson, edited by Terry. A Designer's Log by Michael Power at the Université Laval. And the Mobile Learning Book by Muhammad Ali. And again, these are used as text or as part of courses in a number of universities around the world. And the key, and I guess the point I'm trying to make in this presentation and in this study is that it doesn't affect sales. So you allow the book to be freely available on the internet, and you can still sell print copies. And we'll look at that now. Here's the scholarly journals, some of the main ones that we have: the International Review of Research in Open and Distance Learning, the Canadian Journal of Learning and Technology, the Journal of Distance Education. All of these, and we have about 10 others, are being supported by the press. We're part of the PKP, the Strategic Partnership, the Public Knowledge Project, and we're part of a Alberta-wide Lois Hole Campus Alberta Digital Library initiative. And we go by all of the material is on a Creative Commons license, and because they're scholarly works, they don't allow for derivatives without asking. But you ask Terry or Mohammed, you want to make a derivative work of theirs, there'll be no problem. And here's some of the Creative Commons licenses, but I won't go into them and assume that this audience has a reasonable idea of what they are. Attribution. Generally, we go attribution, non-commercial, no derivatives. We're trying to get rid of the non-commercial part of it. We have done so with some of the journals and some of the books where the authors have agreed to that. And what I'm talking about is the ranking that you get at Amazon. And this is the measure we're using to determine how our sales compare on Amazon with the other traditional university presses. So that is the limitation of this study, is that it only applies to Amazon, but at least it gives an indication that at least in one area of sales, our sales are equivalent to the sales of traditional presses that don't open access their books. And what we're looking at is the sales rank. And to look at the different sales rankings, there's two people, Rampant Press and Samson, have come up with similar estimations of what a ranking means. So from 1 to 10, you sell around 3,000 copies, or as Samson says, about 1,000 copies a day. And then it goes up. If you're from 10 to 100, you're talking about 650 copies sold per day, 200 to 1,000 copies per week. And it goes up 1,000, 10,000, 100,000, etc. Until you get to 1 million, you're talking about the typical scholarly book, which is not going to sell very well in there. If you're greater than 100,000, your ranking is greater than 100,000, it moves comparatively little movement. So even if you get, 50,000 movement, it's not much. The decay is relatively slowly. They're rough estimates at best. And another proviso we have to look at is Amazon doesn't count their Kindle statistics in their ranking. And to be sure, the Kindle books have sold more on Amazon this year than their physical books. So that's an important limitation on this study. The methodology I used was a stratified random sampling. The publications from 2008 to 2010. I used the AU press and compared it with 3 other university presses. 11 books each. It's a very limited sample, so the results we cannot say are definitive in any way. But at the time, there were only 11 books out by AU Press, so it had only just begun. So we'll have to repeat it. And we did 2 samplings separated by 3 months. The other presses, the University of Alberta Press, the University of Calgary Press, and the University of Toronto Press. They were the ones we compared it with. Our prediction was the null hypothesis that there'd be no significant difference in the ranking of open press in comparison with the rank of traditional presses. And we chose a 5% level of significance. And the alternative hypothesis was that there is a difference in the rank of the open press to the rank of traditional presses. So we looked at a comparison of the mean of the Athabasca University Press and the means of the other presses, and we found no significant difference in the ranking. And we did this again January and April. The average of the AU Press versus the control group, the same thing, no significant difference. Sorry, the slides look a bit funny. But even though there was no significant difference in the Amazon sales, there were 24,000 downloads of the books in the AU press, which there were no downloads of the books in the traditional presses. So 9,000 full books were downloaded, an average of 2,000 downloads per book. The average for full books was over 700 downloads, and traditionally scholarly books, 300 is a runaway bestseller. And the average for these is 700 plus 700 of readers. And the median of the full books was 226, and the total median of downloads was 798. So we're moving from the age of the printed book to the age of the digital book, and the open access press is giving far more exposure to scholarly works, far more than they would get in any kind of traditional press. So I'll finish with that and open it up for any questions. Or comments.
want to go ahead, go ahead, and we'll just Rory, would you just restate the question?
Yep. Well, I was sort of hoping that David's experience would happen with our AU press too, but it didn't. There didn't seem to be we couldn't find any significant difference. But the sample is very small, and it really, you have to take this with caution. It's an indication of the fact that there's no difference. But maybe there is, and we'll do this a few more times when we get enough to have a decent sample, and we may be able to then say, hey, it is better, hopefully, but even if it's the same, no significant difference. The real difference is there's those thousands of downloads, and people are actually reading your book. Hey, you're a scholar, and people are reading your book. I mean, what do you get? How much money do you get from a traditional press? Maybe $100 royalty check or something like that.
So
whatever.
David, and then there's several questions in the back.
Yeah, so one of my supervisees just finished a dissertation on this topic, but taking a slightly different angle on it, working with a local publisher that had a bunch of books that had they were several years old and had drifted off into a category where they were selling like a book a month. And they took 8 of these books and featured them on their website as free downloads for anyone. And those free downloads didn't correlate with the change in sales in the store, but they correlated better than 0.75 with sales online. So as more and more people downloaded the free books, the sales on those picked up. And for the period during which they're offering them for download, there was a significant difference in the number of sales that they had. And that dissertation's in our EPD.
Thanks, David.
I was wondering if the books are available for sale in any venues. Oh, are the books available for sale in any venues besides Amazon?
Oh, yes, they are. And that's another limitation of the study is most scholarly books are bought by libraries. But the other presses are very reluctant to give you any information. We tried. We asked the presses, can you give us the information on your book sale? Oh, no, we couldn't do that. And in fact, even our own AU press, they were very reluctant to give me the information on their actual sales. So it's a symptom of that type of a ethos in the academic press world.
Just wondering, Rory, if you could comment on the speed of saturation. In other words, you might sell 10,000 copies, but they happen really quickly instead of really slowly. Is it a whole bunch at the beginning and then a few at the end? Is there any particular pattern?
Yes, there is. It's slow, slower, and even slower. These are academic books, with some exceptions, like these open education books, the e-learning books. They're selling in the thousands, whereas the others are up above the 300 level or whatever, and it's pretty slow. Yeah, you're not. There's no big boom or anything on it. Sorry, there's one other book. It's an anti-American book, which they sell very well in Canada. Bomb Canada, that's it. Yeah, Bomb Canada, that's it. Yeah, that sold very well as well. Yeah. In Canada.
Do you know if the books that are being downloaded, if they're being read? I mean, have you looked at that? in other words, anybody can download something. That doesn't necessarily mean they're going to read it. Whereas if they pay money for it, there's probably a higher probability they're going to read it. Have we looked at that?
I think there's something to what you're saying. However, I have about 10 or 15 paper books that I bought that I haven't read yet. But downloaded, yeah, there's quite a few downloaded ones that I haven't read yet. But I've skimmed over them. I've looked at them. And I hope to get round to reading them at some point. Yeah. Yeah.
The actual book sales are quite an obvious measure of how well downloads are very nice for the academic. But have you got any views on whether or not the faculty or the institution are able to value the downloads as well, in terms of that academic and the impact they're having?
At our institution, I'd say more than most, we would value that would be important, mainly because it's our press, and there's a certain home team advantage to that. But I think it's changing. I think that they're far more valued, and this is becoming more and more important, especially as they download. There's more people downloading them, and maybe not a lot of them aren't reading them, but a lot of them are reading them, and they're citing them, and their citation rate is going up. So I find that some of the things I've had, even way back, that were just brilliant, aren't being cited much because they were in paper and they weren't online, whereas some other things that are online, they're being cited quite a bit. So I think the citation rate is going to be the key, and if you're online, you're going to be cited more, for sure. If it's not online, it's hard for people to get it. People just don't bother.
One more question.
I'm interested in the funding scheme you are using for this. I think it's a hybrid publication that you are having them in paper books and then in online. And is it that the paper books are funding the online production, or how do you do that actually?
I was awfully afraid that somebody would ask this question. It's being subsidized very heavily by the university. And we agreed at the university that we would subsidize it to so much, about $300,000, but it's costing us more. But in Canada, we do have a program that after 3 years, you have to be in business 3 years, you can apply to the Social Science and Humanities Research Council, and they will give you a subsidy. So we've been sort of subsidizing it up to that point. But I expect we will have to continue to subsidize it. And our president is a big supporter of it, and he feels that we need to do this. But there is no university press that's self-financing. There's not one that exists anywhere.
Then maybe I can share an experience also. What we do in the it's called the German the Society for Media and Science in the German-speaking countries. We run one big meeting a year, and we produce a book out of that. And we are selling for all the delegates one copy, buying them from the publisher, and this then pays for the online free downloadable version. So I think these funding models are not too bad if you try to combine these two.
That's a good idea, and in fact, we've done it for some of the poorly selling arts books that that people aren't buying. That at conferences we've given them free to delegates and speakers, and the university has bought them. So it's a similar thing, but we should build it into the price of the conference. That is a good idea. Yes. I won't forget that.
I think we need to move on, but let's give Rory a big round of applause.
Thank you very much.